Hey everyone, Regal Reviews here. It is White Rice Wednesday, which means time for my Survivor recap. So, to recap on tonight's episode, they're basically dealing with the double elimination from last week, and Erica wants to get rid of Shan. She sees that Shan's a big threat, and Shan doesn't trust Deshawn, so she wants to get rid of Deshawn. I'm like, what did he really do that she doesn't trust him? That he lost her trust. I don't understand that. And there was talk about between Ricard and Shan about the different survivor stories that each of them have, and there's different aspects of the game that go into winning, and no single jury is going to vote the same. But I think one thing that sells the victory is the story you're able to tell the jury. You need to have a good survivor resume, of course, but you also need to have a good story. So the reward challenge, they're attached to this rope and they have to go through this obstacle to solve this star puzzle, and it looked freaking hard. Like, I wonder if there's like a puzzle app for that, because I know there's some survivor puzzle apps, but not survivor puzzle apps, but puzzle apps. And my favorite that I would love to win on Survivor, they were playing for pizza, and Jeff is absolutely right. Best reward of the season. I mean, at least so far. I don't know what else he's got up his sleeve. And it's basically pizza under the stars. I mean, what's better than that? So there'll be blankets, pillows, and everything. And Ricard ended up winning. And Jeff does that famous thing where he says, choose one person. And of course, he chooses Shan. We all knew that was going to happen. And usually how these things go is, the person chooses their closest alliance member. So that I totally understand. Then he chooses Heather and Xander, and I'm thinking, why on earth would he choose Heather and Xander? He says Heather because she hasn't won a reward, but then he also wants to pay Xander back because he gave his reward away to somebody. My initial thought was, because Nasir's idol, for all we know, is out there in the game, my thought was maybe he wanted Danny, Deshawn, and Liana to stay back at camp to keep an eye on Erica, but then also have somebody go out and look for the idol, because if they have an idol in their alliance, they'll have two, because Shan has an idol, and if one of them find it, they have two idols. So that is a pretty good move on Ricard's part, if that's his reasoning. And we see that Danny wants to get rid of Ricard, and he tells Liana, I'm thinking, are you freaking stupid? Like, why the hell would you tell Liana? Her and Shan are like this. Like, Liana's like her little minion. Like, why would you tell her? You know she's going to go right and tell Shan what just happened. And Ricard mentions how he wanted to be nice to everyone, like, in regard to the people who he chose to go on the reward with him. And Shan was saying how he's her best friend in the game, and as much as I don't like Shan, I really do like the relationship she and Ricard have. I mean, it reminds me a lot of Tony and Sarah from Winners at War. Like, their relationship was through 3 different Survivor seasons, and it was so close. They had that tight bond, but they also had the understanding that eventually they're going to have to get each other out in order to win the game. And that's what Shan was and Ricard were basically saying. Like, they're this close, but they also understand that it's going to come a time where they're going to have to vote each other out. And it's never, I mean, we've never played the game before, but I'm sure that's never an easy thing to do, because when you have that one person you can trust and then you have to vote them out, I mean, that's hard. Like, I can't imagine what they go through, the thought process behind that. So, and we see in that, when Tony went up against Sarah, did he want to go up against Sarah? No, his ideal plan was to take Sarah to the end, but he had no choice. Like, he had to go up against Sarah in order to win. So, in the game of Survivor, you have to do things you normally wouldn't do in the game. You normally wouldn't do in order to win. And Heather caught Shan humming, which I thought was hysterical. I don't think she caught on to why she was humming, but I find it hysterical that somebody finally caught on to her humming. Leanna, of course, then tells Shan that they want to get rid of Ricard. So I'm thinking Shan's probably like, well, I got the information I needed out of her. And Leanna and Shan might be close, but I feel like, and again, as much as I don't like Shan, like, her manipulation skills are spot on. Like, she's able to, it's mind-boggling to me how she's able to get this information out of people. Like, we saw early on, she was able to manipulate JD not once but twice into giving her his advantage for trust. And we've seen Leanna try to do that last week. Tried to play, take a page out of Shan's book and try to say, well, give me your advantage, and that'll show that I can trust you. You know what I mean? And it's good that people are starting to catch on to that, because if they're on the bottom and they suddenly give them an idol, well, that idol's in their possession and they can use it on themselves if they want to. And Shan then tells Ricard what's going on, that his name's on the that he's on the chopping block, and Ricard wants time to process this, but Shan's not letting him, so I could see what he would feel annoyed. At the immunity challenge, they had to stand on this beam while they hold this pole and had to keep a ball on it, and if the ball fell out or they stepped off the beam, they're out. And during different intervals, they would move down the beam but then also move their hand down the pole, and Ricard ended up winning immunity. So congratulations to Ricard, and he couldn't have won it at a better time because he was going to go home tonight. Spoiler alert, Ricard did not go home. So Shan now wants to get rid of Erica. She thinks it's a great time to get rid of Erica, and Shan says not to tell Xander a name, so then that way he thinks it might be him and he might play his idol then. I think Xander's smarter than that, but at the same time, I feel like that's a pretty good move on Shan's part. And Ricard then comes up with the plan to get rid of Shan, but the problem is they don't have the numbers. They have Ricard, Heather, Erica, and Xander on board, but then they got to get somebody on the other side to, vote with them. And it's like, who do you trust over there? So then Ricard tells Deshawn about that they want him out and everything, and Deshawn was already on the fence of like, can he trust Shan, can he not? And apparently something happened between Shan and Danny that he was willing to vote with them, or more inclined to vote with him than last week. So I'm wondering what Shan said to piss Danny off, because I don't know if I missed something or what, but I don't know what happened. And they come up with the idea to split the votes between Leanna and Shan, because as we know, Shan has an idol. So if she decides to play her idol, then Leanna goes home. But if she doesn't play the idol, she goes home. So as long as she doesn't get the information that her name's being thrown out there, she'll go home with an idol in her pocket. So at Tribal Council, they talk about how people feel like they're on the bottom, but it's not actually a bad thing to be on the bottom, because then you see other people are on the bottom, and when that old saying, like, once you hit rock bottom, you can only go up from there. And I think that's true in the game of Survivor, because you see yourself on the bottom, but then you see these other people that are on the bottom, so you can possibly make a big move and make something happen. And Ricard mentions how he and Shan are, how they're very close. And I don't understand why he's telling people that. I mean, at this point, it's public knowledge, but I don't understand why everyone's being so open that, oh, I'm close with this person, I'm close with that person, and saying, like, oh, I have an idol, I have this season. Like, that just, I don't get why you're telling people that. So no idols were played, and it came to a second tie this season between Leanna and Shan. And for those of you who don't know how a tie works, you can only vote for Leanna or Shan, and Leanna and Shan do not vote. Interesting enough, if it was another tie and they couldn't make a unanimous decision, they would have to draw rocks, and then Leanna and Shan would become immune. And it finally was Shan. I am so happy Shan's gone. And she acted like a sore loser, saying that, Deshaun, you're a snake. I'm like, what exactly did he do that shows that he's a snake? It's like Leanna last week saying, like, I hate his face to Xander. I'm like, now, if he said that, what would have happened if he said that to her? Then it would have been like, oh, do you see how awful Xander is? He's so sexist and everything. Like, it was mind-boggling to me. I'm like, wow, so much venom. So, about Shan. As much as I love to see her gone, I'm so happy about that. But I gotta give her props because I'm gonna say how I really feel. I feel like her, like I mentioned, her manipulation skills are astounding. I don't understand how people gave her this much power in the game. Like, it's like a case where they knew she was a threat, but they didn't try to get her out, and how she was able to manipulate them into voting the way she wants to. I mean, it's amazing to me, but they did send her home with an idol in her pocket. And it's really interesting, like, their relationships on Survivor and how they play into one's games. I mean, we saw how close Tiffany and Evie were, and Shan and Ricard this season. As much as I don't like Shan, I know I'm like a broken record, but if there was like another Survivor season where there's Survivor duos, I would be interested to see Shan and Ricard. And what I like is that people seemed open to work with everyone. Now, I don't really understand the whole 4 alliance, and I was wondering, like, why on earth would you be so close to somebody that you only have known once? Now, you look at Tiffany and Evie, they've been together since day one, so that makes sense that they're so close. But then you have people you've only met a day, and you're so tight with them. The only thing I could think of is maybe because like how Deshaun mentioned how the African American community had a terrible year in 2020, and he's not wrong. I mean, they had a horrible year. I mean, it's very eye-opening to us, and maybe sometimes we don't understand exactly what they go through, but we see, people taking the steps. Like, we've seen Survivor cast more African American cast members than they've ever had this season. So the fact that they're this close to winning the $1 million, it says a lot, and it probably means a lot to them too. But I didn't understand why they were so close, and the only thing I could think of is maybe because of all the struggles that the African American community has gone through. Like, they have that understanding of each other, and it's something that maybe all of us don't understand, but they do. I could definitely see how they're bonded for that. But it's like this too. Like, you don't have to feel like, oh, I have to go with them because they're part of my community. Like, for me, for example, I have a disability, and I've been told from certain people over the years that I'm only ever going to be friends with people that are disabled. Like, I'm never going to have any friends who are non-disabled, and that just was mind-boggling to me. Like, why couldn't I, be friends with whoever? And it did seem like, they were open to work with everyone. We saw Deshaun was willing to work with Evie. He ended up blindsiding them, but I mean, they had talks, they got close, they were willing to work with each other. We saw that Shan was willing to work with Ricard, so it wasn't like, I mean, when it came down to it, I feel like if the African American Alliance would have continued, like, and if they, say for conversation's sake, got to a Final Four, I don't remember where I was going with this. I was like, if they got to a Final Four, I mean, eventually they'd have to vote each other. I really don't know where I was going with that. I had like an interesting point to make, but oh, what I meant was that it's wasn't their way or the highway. Like they wanted it to be a four. That was their ideal final four, but they realized that, hey, this isn't gonna work. I can work with other people to maybe improve my game. You know what I mean? Like they weren't just saying, no, we're only gonna vote in our alliance and that's it. Like they were willing to, listen to other people's proposals and willing to work with somebody when they needed to benefit their game. So that's what I mean. Like being open and everything, but still at the same time having that bond. So, and I could definitely see it now, like how if somebody was LGBT on Survivor, they might feel more inclined to align with somebody who, if they find out they're LGBT, they might be more inclined to align with them. Doesn't mean they have to, but they might feel like that. They might feel that automatic connection is what I mean. So next week, we see that Liana is pissed, and we knew this is coming. And it's nothing against Liana. Like anybody who has an alliance member gone, it's hard. It's tough. We know people are gonna be mad, but when they make it about their whole game, then that's when they become annoying. But we don't know what's gonna happen yet. We just see that she's pissed, and we see there's gonna be a new twist in the game. And I'm thinking, a new twist, like what the fuck can this be? So yeah, interesting Survivor tonight. I love Survivor. No, you guys do too. Survivor is on Wednesdays, 8 p.m. on CBS. And you could also stream it on Paramount Plus. Hope you guys enjoyed tonight's Survivor. Until next time, stay regal.